Welcome to episode 26 of the Civil War Breakfast Club. I am your co-host, Mary, joined by my awesome co-host. Tonight he is St. Darren Teen, also known as Darren Weeks.
Good evening. Actually, good morning to those listeners. And you in a very jovial mood today. Very jovial mood, giggling through the intro. The intro you spent obviously a lot of time preparing for, by the way.
I said I was going to do the typical Mare intro. It's
like, wow, is that Shakespeare?
Fucker.
But anyway, so how are you?
Welcome. Good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. It's a cold, miserable New England night. It's snowing. It's cold. It's dark. It's everything.
Welcome to Canada. That's how it is.
Exactly. But you know what, though? We will try to warm the spirits tonight as we talk about Valentine's Day.
We will.
That is coming up here. And people don't realize that Valentine's Day is not exactly a new holiday. It goes back a long, long, long time. Mm-hmm. And we will talk about some of its our originations. We will talk about, for purposes of our podcast, how it affects the Civil War. And then maybe, just maybe, we're going to have some dating profiles of some of our favorite generals to talk about as if they were on the scene today, looking to find themselves some Valentine's love, Mary.
And we are at episode 26. So we are at the half year mark with this. Our 6-month anniversary is the 22nd of this month.
It feels like 100.
Already? Yeah, I know that feeling.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about it. Oh, God.
So before we go any further, our listeners now know we're doing dry February. What seltzer water are you drinking tonight?
Oh, nothing but the best for me. Store brand lemon seltzer from Stop and Shop. The good stuff was $1.99 at the old Stop and Shop. Man.
I almost thought you said Stonewall Jackson lemon.
Well, this is the stuff this is actually, it's colorized if you can see it, but this is the stuff he actually would have drank. I may get stuck in a tree later. We'll see.
Yeah. And you're drinking out of your Lincoln mug tonight?
Drinking out of my Lincoln mug tonight because when you think of Valentine's Day, you got to think of Lincoln. We'll go with it. What about yourself?
Blackberry seltzer water, which is actually quite good. And I am drinking it out of my John Reynolds mug. Because he's going to figure into our podcast tonight. We have a very interesting story.
I was thinking maybe Blackberry because you were talking about the Black Hawk War in the live last week. I thought maybe that was your connection you were going.
Do you mean the Black Hawk War?
Go big or go home.
There, I did it. I got it.
You did it. You did a great job.
Well, usually within about 30 seconds, we're at the E rating.
Yeah, well, there you go.
And that's not E for everybody. That's E for explicit.
Once again, parents, we're sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
this explicit rating brought to you by Canada.
You as always.
And Joe Trudeau.
And Joe Trudeau? What? Okay.
Don't you remember when what's his name? Trump's press secretary, the first one, called Trudeau Joe Trudeau?
Oh, yeah.
We made such a joke of it up here in Canada.
Yeah, well, let's edit that out. So
anyway, back on topic.
So anyway, we were talking about Valentine's Day, and this is when we were doing all the updating and studying for this. It reminds me a lot of our Christmas episode because it's very similar in a lot of different ways. Yeah. Now, before we go into the Civil War, we got to talk a little bit about Valentine's Day. And Valentine's Day, and it's surprising, people don't always know this, but it goes all the way back to the Middle Ages, right? Mm-hmm. Some people trace it back to the festival of Lupercalia in Rome, whatever that is, which was held on February 15th. Mm-hmm. There is no connection, Mary, between St. Valentine and romance.
None.
Okay, which sounds a lot like the connection between Darren and romance in high school, if you want to think about it.
Well, the same with Mary and romance in high school.
Okay, but all seriously, St. Valentine, there was no connection between angels and cupids and candy and all that. It was something that totally came along later. But regardless, Valentine's Day has been celebrated for centuries and centuries. Valentine's Day cards are almost just as old. They became quite popular in the 1700s. They were basically handwritten notes on basic pieces of paper, kind of like the ones you hold up in the live sometimes, basically. Those Valentine's ones you show everybody.
But I bet they didn't say fucker.
No, probably not.
Oh, wait, unless they were a vinegar Valentine, which we will get to in this episode.
Talk to that, and there's another E for the old explicit right there. So as time goes on, 1828, Sir Walter Scott, he wrote that story, The Fair Maid of Perth, Valentine's Day, where they declared February 14th a day dedicated to romance. I need a good Barry White voice to say that, you know. But
the Barry White music in the background.
Hey, we're gonna tie a bow onto this one. Hey. So anyway, Valentine's Day cards. So you hear the phrase, Hallmark holiday, and that's exactly what this is. Valentine's Day was really marketed in the 1820s in the United States and England. It grew in popularity throughout the mid 1800s. Postal rates became standardized, and that helped people mail Valentine's Day cards. So they were basically just flat paper with color drawings on it. There was no Snoopy or anything that we could tell or anything like that. And they were sealed in wax, and they were mailed, and it was fun to get. Really, in the United States, when it really took off here in, of all places, New England, as usual. All the good stuff starts up here. So an English Valentine card was sent to a woman in Massachusetts in 1846 by the name of Esther Howland. She was a student at nearby Mount Holyoke College in South Dudley, Mass., which is way out west in Massachusetts, almost on the New York border. And she decided to become very smart and mass-produced all these cards. And so around 1850 or so, her father was a paper stationer, I guess the phrase was. And Worcester, Mass. Became the Valentine's capital of America. And if you've been to Worcester, Mass. lately, you will be stunned to hear that.
She forms the New England Valentine Company, and she has just her and a bunch of women on this kind of assembly line in her house making these Valentine's cards. She made between $25,000 and $75,000 a year doing this until she sold it in 1888 to a competitor.
That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
It is. And the other thing about Valentine's Day too is the one thing you always hear is today how commercialized it is. How it's all about there's all these candy and the cards are overpriced. I mean I personally think the greeting card industry is like overpricing everything, but whatever. So they're in the 1860s during the Civil War, it is very much commercialized, just like it is now. There was advertisements running in the paper alongside casualty lists.
It was, and it was funny up around that time, heading into the Civil War, what you just said about the commercialization, how it was aggravating. Even back then, they knew. The New York Times actually, back in February 14th, ironically, of 1856, probably not ironic, that's why they ran it, but they ran an editorial bashing the entire industry. And they wrote, "Our bows and bells are satisfied with a few miserable lines neatly written on fine paper, or else they purchased a printed Valentine's Day card with verses ready-made, some of which are costly and many are cheap and indecent." So right off the bat, they're already saying this industry is garbage. But again, we talk about as we head into the Civil War, it was a very popular holiday, and these cards are really starting to go crazy. And as these soldiers were going away to war and people were at home, you can see exactly where this is going around Valentine's Day.
Well, yeah, it's a way to communicate, just like it was with Christmas cards, right? Like it's a way to boost morale. And that's, that's what some companies really tried to sell women on was like, hey, make sure you send this to your sweetheart. And like there was two different companies. There was the New York American Valentine Company, as well as the Shillingtons in DC. And both of them sold these kind of Valentine Day packets. Now, the New York American Valentine's Company promoted Soldiers Valentine's packets, Army Valentine packets, and Torch of Love packets. That sounds like something AP Hill would get. Torch burn.
Torch of Love was
And these are deliberately marketed towards women. The New York Valentine Company said, "Don't forget your soldier lovers. Keep their courage up with a rousing Valentine."
Well, they were marketing back then. February of 1861, which is between secession and Sumter. There was a newspaper out of Leavenworth, Kansas, of all places, the Times, and they were marketing already this stuff. The war wasn't even there yet, and they were already marketing. Most readers are probably aware that Valentine's Day occurs on the 14th of February. The artful archer, Cupid, will be in his glory, filling his quiver with missiles of lovely warfare. So right off the bat, that hasn't even started yet, and they're already marketing for this upcoming war for these cards. So give credit to somebody, you know?
It's just it's just as cheesy as it back then as it was now. There was Holmes County Farmer newspaper in Ohio that said, wrote on February 11th, 1864, "We are reminded that Valentine's Day is approaching Tuesday next, the 14th. It is set aside as the carnival of lovers. It is said the birds choose their mates on that day, and it being a leap year, it is expected that all marriageable girls will select their mates."
Yeah.
So there you go.
So that's illegal in most states now, by the way, in case you're curious about that whole thing. Yeah.
But it's very like, just like today, it's very heavily commercialized.
It is. But you know, though, you go back to the actual soldiers now, we're talking specifically about the guys in the field. They obviously had to make their own cards.
Yeah,
they made their own cards, and you start to read some of the diaries of these folks about the stuff they wrote to these some of these people in their cards. Private Joseph Morris, he was a member of the Georgia Cavalry. He wrote to his paramour Sylvanie Bremont of Standardsville, Virginia. Okay, it's good stuff when you're talking about old Sylvanie Bromont here. But he wrote, "Moments appear days to me, in a day and age of misery and woe. When I cannot behold your beloved face, why have we passion? If upon the first development of their genuine tenderness, they will be curbed and checked by the arbitrary rules of war." So right off the bat, you can see already what's going on with this. These guys are starting to realize, okay, I joined this army. I'm going to be separated from my whatever girlfriend, wife, boyfriend, whatever you want to call it. But you start to see the longing. We talked like at the Christmas episode of this, right? I think the reality of a lot of these people of this camp life was was something. The South specifically was having a tougher time with it. Just because, I mean, I hate to read all these quotes here, but I got another quote for you, Mary. Richmond Whig on February 9th, 1864. And what they're talking about is they're saying, although public attention should be diverted from levity, whilst the alarms of war are heard at our very doors, we believe a large number of Valentines will pass through the post office on February 14th. So what they're saying basically is a lot of shit's going down, but people are still going to be sending their Valentines. And so I think that was that way, that connection they had to have.
Yeah, it was a way of boosting morale, of staying connected with those people. Much like, again, it goes back to our Christmas episode where it's not the same situation, but we're in a situation where some of us are separated from, our loved ones, like in Valentine's Day or whatever, and can't see them. So you have to come up with other ways to communicate with them or spend time with them or whatever. And that's how they were doing it in the Civil War. That's why they're marketing towards women to send these Valentines, not just to, tell your boyfriend or whatever that you love them, but it's nice to get something. And
it's funny though, unlike Christmas, which was really a secular holiday at the time, this one was more marketed.
Oh, right? Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, Christmas was more of a solemn thing. It was cold. It's Christmas time. You miss your family. This was more geared not for the kids. This was for the paramour, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so even back then, whoever did this idea had to have been the guy whose relatives created the Lifetime channel. I'll tell you that right now.
That isn't. I have never ever seen.
Right?
But I've never seen a Hallmark movie.
At the sheer cheesery of the stuff they did. I mean, you're basically marketing to these poor dudes in camp, and these poor women to have some of these salacious at times messages back and forth. And I've never seen, you see a lot of soldier diaries and you see a lot of letters. You don't see too many soldier Valentines,
No.
We'll talk about one here in a little while, but a couple we did find. But it is interesting though, as we talk about this. And I think a lot of people, for whatever reason, would probably be surprised that Valentine's Day in 1862 was basically the same as 2021. Right?
Exactly. There's that, and too, even today, there's that whole there's that pressure to get something for your significant other for Valentine's Day. Like if you don't, you're a dick or a bitch or whatever.
Well, we talked a couple weeks ago when John Wilkes Booth is sitting with his sister Asia.
Yeah.
and he's writing a Valentine's Day to Lucy Hale, and he has him all night to write it because he can't do it. I mean, that's serious business back then
Mm-hmm.
still, because God forbid you buy the wrong card or the wrong thing on a
Yeah,
holiday
or
like
you
that,
don't bring home
you know,
flowers or something like that.
or something like that. You know what I mean? But it's funny how the mentality is really the same.
It is.
You
Yeah.
know, so again, people, the war wasn't that long ago. We're not talking. We're not talking about a million years ago. This is just a couple hundred years ago. But it's interesting. You could almost see these soldiers all standing around, coming up with ideas. The way guys stand around the card thing at the supermarket, looking to, you could almost see them, right? And it's just pretty funny to do. But I mean, I think the separation from your loved one is the biggest obvious difference between now and then.
Yeah.
You could pick up a phone, you can send a message, you can do all kinds of things now.
Yeah,
Back
exactly.
then, you send a Valentine that you wrote, kind of like the ones you got when you're like the third grade. Every kid has to get one,
God, I had
right?
panic attacks over that because
Oh,
I would worry that like, oh, am I giving this card to the right person? You know?
I could see, exactly. Will you be, dear fucker?
Yeah,
Happy
dear
Valentine's Day.
fucker.
you know,
In
but
grade
but
6, I had Jurassic Park Valentines that I gave out to my entire class.
except with the real dinosaurs, though, because it was a long time ago. You probably,
Fucker, you'll always be 12 years older than me.
Oh, thank you so much for that.
Mm. Zip it.
But zip it. But as we talk about this, the one that does come out though is there are some really, really good love stories that come out of the Civil
Yeah,
War, and
there
is
are.
and we're going to talk about a couple, and so a couple of them right now, and this is
I was gonna say before we get to that, we have Vinegar Valentines though.
oh, God, I can't forget about Vinegar
Not to
Valentine's.
cut
All
you
excited to talk
off.
about
I'm
that. Oh
sorry.
no, you never do that.
Fucker. Half of all Valentine's sales during the Civil War, like in the 19th and early 20th century, were vinegar Valentines, which basically were a way of throwing shade anonymously. And you could insult someone's grooming habits, their moral choices, like their profession, whatever you wanted. So, for example, like there was ones that were for army captains, or like people in the army, right? So they would slam army surgeons. And this one card that I found said, "Ho ho, old sawbones, here you come. You're always ready with your traps to mangle, saw, and hack us." Like they dig pretty deep, like some of these cards that are insulting. There was one called the Bull Runner, which was a deserter fleeing from battle. And then there was one called the Private, which was a really grumpy looking soldier, which could very
But
well
they
just
also call that Bull Runner the O.L. Howard. Just saying. Go ahead, continue.
There was one called the Private, which was a really grumpy looking soldier, which could have described me last week. Darren says nothing.
Let it
And
go.
the caption on that card said, "As you pace your lone rounds in the wilds of Secessia, my dear little hearts forever will bless you. And when the war's over, if you so incline, you may take me and make me your own Valentine." So there's a little bit of like love in that, but there's also a little bit of like, haha, you suck because of where you are kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give them credit. I mean, I think they have to find entertainment any way they possibly can.
Yeah,
I mean,
and this was a very socially sanctioned thing that happened. Criticizing and insulting people on Valentine's Day was also a very popular tradition, as much as it was to tell somebody that you love them too. And like I said, it's estimated that half of all sales were made up of these vinegar Valentine cards. And it was a tradition that continued into the early 20th century as well.
That's basically the gag gifts of today.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
You know?
Yep. Yeah, it was the beginning of that. So yes, I'm very sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, well, listen, okay. But just so you know, not every relationship in the Civil War was a vinegar Valentine. There were some really touching ones. And considering this Valentine's Day, we thought we'd touch on a couple of them. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, one that I think a lot of people have heard about is the romance between John Reynolds and Kate Hewitt, which I know we've talked about this many, many times. So you know what? Take over. You're going to sit back and let you tell the story.
So the story of John Reynolds and Kate Hewitt is pretty well known in the Civil War. And there's actually been some research done on it recently that has shed new light on in particular on Kate Hewitt, which is really, really awesome. The research that has been done that has kind of changed the story a little bit. So John met Kate while he was traveling from San Francisco to Philadelphia in 1860. And as was usual back then, like they fell in love pretty quickly. The relationship was kept secret probably because of religion. Reynolds was a Protestant and Kate was just converting to Catholicism. And back then, Catholics were still heavily persecuted. And just think they wanted to keep it quiet. And plus, the war at this time is like, they know it's coming, right? So they are engaged on September 15th, 1861. And she took his West Point ring, which she used to imprint the wax seals on the letters she would send him. And he wore a Catholic religious medal around his neck, which was a gold ring joined in the shape of clasped hands. And it said, Dear Kate on it, just on the inner band. He visits her very briefly in the winter of 1863. And they decided at that point that they were going to announce their engagement to their families on July the 8th, 1863.
Yeah, unfortunately, we all know what happened on July 1st, 1863 with that. So John Reynolds, as not to give away the story, but he doesn't make it. He gets killed he gets killed in Gettysburg over down by the Herbst Woods, and it's obviously it's a very sad thing, and no one knows the romance between him and Kate. So they make a vow where if he's to be killed in battle, she agrees that she's going to join a convent if she's killed in battle, which is it's quite a commitment right there. So unfortunately, as everybody knows, he's killed on the first day of the Battle of Gettysburg. A Sergeant Vale is the one who tells Kate of John's death in his last moments. And the story is, he's leading the Black Hats into the woods at Herbst Woods. He's shot and pretty much killed instantly, shot in the back of the head and knocked off his horse. And that was pretty much it for him. Kate's obviously upset. She asks if John had any last final messages for her. And he's like, nope, he didn't say much. And she actually, at that point, she's going to give Vale a handmade handkerchief that she had made. Half of it would be supposed to be made for John, because why else would she have it? As a remembrance of both of them, and it's something that he held on to. She will, to her word, enter that convent. So she moves on to a convent in Emmitsburg, Maryland, which is about 10 minutes from Gettysburg. But as history goes on, she doesn't stay forever in that convent. She does move on.
No, she does. And she does have a relationship with his family, particularly with his sister, Ellie, because a few days after, it was on July 3rd that she went to one of his sister's houses where John was before he was being transferred to back home to Lancaster. And it said that, she sat with his body for quite a while. At times she wept uncontrollably, but she ends up placing his West Point ring in the coffin, and she takes back her medal. And as you said, Darren, she does enter that convent in Emmitsburg, where she takes the name of Sister Hildegard. And she ends up leaving the convent, though, on September 3rd, 1868. And she goes back to Albany, New York.
She goes back to New York, and history kind of loses her a little bit. She comes back here in a little bit, but she ultimately ends up getting married.
Yep.
She ends up getting married to a guy named Joseph Ford with a P, Pfortd, in 1874. She never completed all her vows at the convent, so she gets married, and she basically ends up living up there, and she dies of tuberculosis just a couple of years later. So about 2 years later, she dies, and she ends up being buried up there, really in unmarked grave is where she really gets buried. And there's questions about where she was buried or when she died. There was that one story that she lived until 1902, and she had but just judge everything down, she did get married and did get buried with Joseph. So she did ultimately get married. And I think a lot of people, you hear a lot of the stories about Kate Hewitt that she never remarried, but she certainly did. And it took a while, and she did live up to her promise to John. But again, at some point it just didn't take, and she did move on.
Yeah. And who knows if that was part if that was really part of their engagement or not, like, because so much does get lost in history, right? It could have just been one of those like reading between the lines things. But this, like, for years, it was believed that she had not got married and that she was this Kate Hewitt who was buried in Stillwater, New York. It has since been discovered very, very recently, like I think in the last year and a half, that that's not John's Kate Hewitt. John's Kate Hewitt was buried in Albany, New York, and had got married after John died. And there's actually a really good YouTube video about this. It's from, is it National Civil War Museum? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, the was Wayne Mott's museum in Harrisburg.
Yeah, Wayne Motts, and then he's interviewing Jeff Harding, who is a licensed battlefield guide, and he was the one that discovered this with the help of one of his researchers about Kate Hewitt. So the story has changed, and it's really, like, I just found it so fascinating, the research they did. I do have a quote to read about Kate from John's sister Ellie. She wrote of Kate, "Poor girl has been a heroic mourner and most worthy of our dear one. I cannot tell you all she said of him, but she was in his heart, and from her I learned much of him, of his feelings and inner life that I never knew before. She made no parade of her religion, nor in any way that was least disagreeable." So they did grow quite close with her. Now they don't keep in contact with her. I think there's a point where they don't have any contact with her at all. But this is something, like, because they got to know her, they got to know a little bit more of their brother, which I think is pretty cool too. But it's still, like, it's one of those sad stories of the Civil War, and you wonder what could have been. But at least she was able to find somebody.
It's interesting how they kept it secret and kept it quiet.
Yeah,
You
because
know,
not even his men knew. His men
right?
had
I mean,
no idea.
they never knew they found the necklace on his thing.
Yeah.
That's one of those clatter rings you see with the hands. You see those sometimes, the
Yeah.
Irish ones.
Yeah.
But that must have been quite a surprise. I mean, unfortunately, they, for whatever reason, they chose to keep it quiet. And it didn't work out for them, obviously, unfortunately, because of the situations of the
Yeah.
war. But it's sad. I mean, these stories are sad when you really get into them. You think about people's own lives and stuff like that. You don't think about, when your significant other is going off to work for the day, that something like that's going to happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
And chances are the other one's not going to enter a convent if it does. Realistically, I mean, just be honest. Most of my friends will be at the bar 3 hours later, unfortunately. But I mean, this is a real story where I think a lot of people have a a notion of yes, but she never got married. She went off to become a convent, but she did her thing and she lived the life she could. But it had to. I mean, obviously, needless to say, that's a hard story to go through.
It is,
and,
yeah.
And you know what? For every John Reynolds, there's 1,000 like that. John Reynolds we know because it's John Reynolds, but
McPherson's was very similar too. James McPherson.
But how many husbands and brothers and fathers went off to war and never came back?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And so so you can imagine just the heartbreak, and especially around, you're engaged and you're starting your life together, and that this horrible war comes, and and then you're thinking, you just get through it the best way you can. But the fact they had a vow that, allegedly anyway, if I die, this is what's going to happen. So that's the faith, that's the reality that all these guys faced.
Yeah. And just what was really sad about the story is the fact that they were going to tell their families on July the 8th. Like that's the heartbreaking part of it. It's kind of like McPherson when he went to ask for leave from Sherman so he could go marry his fiance, and Sherman said no because of the Battle of Atlanta.
Didn't work out for old Burbseye either, unfortunately.
Ends up working out for Howard though in that situation. Gets elevated to command.
You got as happy as a Mylar Valentine balloon when you mentioned him right there. Anyway, well, we talked before, so Reynolds, we talked about, it's a sad story. So I'm going to tell another story. This is a story about a couple named James Love, ironically, and a woman named Eliza Molly Wilson. Now, this is a story that's interesting because this is one that actually was discovered about 10 years ago at the Missouri Museum of History, and it was basically released. There were a bunch of letters they found that these guys were writing back and forth. The letters that James was writing to Molly, they're the ones that survived. Whatever she wrote back to him, they're gone, so no one knows. But you can kind of tell by reading what he wrote, basically what they were talking about. And they're an interesting couple though, because he these people here, they're both born in Ireland, kind of like your boy Claiborne, right? So James Love, he's born in 1830 in the town of Bushmills, which I don't know if you know this, Mary. It's famous for their whiskey. Okay,
Ooh, being from
Bushmill
Ireland.
whiskey, exactly. On the northern shore of Ireland, and he emigrated here to the U.S. in 1839. He got to St. Louis in 1850. Basically worked in a grocery store and opened one up, and then Molly was born in 1833 on Island McGee, Mary, about 50 miles southeast of the Bushmills. And she and her mother also moved to St. Louis, ironically, in 1850. So they were both Presbyterians, and they met and they were engaged very quickly. After their engagement, he joined the 5th U.S. Reserves in St. Louis, and he was sent off to Missouri to fight the rebels. So they wrote a series of letters back and forth, and you can just tell by reading them how it was. Just he wrote one that says basically, just hum me a tune in the evening hours occasionally, and I will fancy I will hear it borne in the autumnal breeze.
Aww.
So very romantic type, this one.
Yeah.
It's kind of, he was also a hard racist, but that's we're not going to read those part of the notes. But so he goes off to war, and so he goes off, and he starts writing. He's using her as basically his feeling of goodness and home, because he's seeing a lot of bad stuff. He says, all my hopes of heaven and earth depend on you, he writes. So he starts talking a lot about the battles. He's talking about exchanging fire with rebels on the riverbanks, the taunts of secessionist ladies in Lexington he talks about, and it talks a lot about his requests. He wrote home a lot and asked for beer in newspapers. So there you go. But it's really interesting though, because one thing he does is he talks a lot to her about the people around him. And one guy he hates is Don Carlos Buell. For whatever reason, he hates him, and he bashes him all throughout these letters. Okay, he considers him a traitor. He says he admires Rosecrans. So there you go. Okay. He calls him Rosie. That's how he responds to him in his letters, which is General Rosecrans, but he calls him just think about it. We call him Rosie, but these guys, he's just a private. Cool. He finds a portrait of Rosecrans and sends it back to Molly, so she can admire the general as he does. Okay.
Wow.
So there you go. So basically, but he's also somebody who he doesn't like emancipation. He just doesn't like it. He just doesn't. He only sees it as a way to punish the rebels, the Emancipation Proclamation. Mm-hmm. But he talks a lot about he wants to see more battles, and it's just fun stuff to read. He says he wants to see some action. That's what he says a lot.
Ooh.
Well, yeah. Well, okay. Well, there you go. But then he unfortunately gets sick and he gets injured. So he gets badly wounded at your Battle of Chickamauga, Mary.
Wow. Of
all places. He ends up there. He does recover, but he gets captured. He gets sent to Libby Prison, okay, where he continues to write to her. And he talks about the letters he writes to her in prison are very flirty. They're very teasy. He's got a little spell to him on one side of him, very lovey-dovey despite his crappy circumstances. I mean, if you're in Libby Prison, you have to, whatever. Basically, he bumps around, ends up in Columbia, South Carolina, and the letters just stop. Okay, so you can kind of that's probably not good news. But what happens is the reason why they stop is he escapes. Okay, he escapes. He hikes to western South Carolina. He finds his way to the Union lines in Tennessee, and he finally does arrive back at their camp. Basically, he gets back, and he's with a lot of guys, and he escapes. And she thinks he's gone. He ain't gonna make it. He's up the spout, right? Mm-hmm. But he shows up, just like a movie shows up. And you know what happens, Mary? Guess what happens then? They get married and live happily ever after.
Aww.
So this is a good story. So that one's kind of
really good.
That's kind of the opposite of the story with Reynolds, right? Where this is one where he goes to fight and he gets caught.
Yeah.
He goes to camp, writes letters, and then he I mean, you got to wonder what she's thinking. This is the worst, right? Because he's the type who just keeps commenting. He just writes her all the time. Then it just stops because he escapes because he wants to get back to her. That was the incentive for escaping. So kind of like one of those made for TV Lifetime movies.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, or a Hallmark Channel movie.
You know, but this is another thing. Well, you wonder how many of these stories exist like this, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, but this is one you read this and it's good. And what's cool about this story, okay, is the newspaper, I think it was the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, got this story because these letters were discovered in 2011.
Wow.
And they released them like one at a time for like a week, for like 2 months. And the people were absolutely enthralled by these.
Mm-hmm.
So they read it and they have to wait till the next week to see what happened next. And they wanted to see what happened to this couple. And they did it in a way that was very Shakespearean. And they finally found they lived happily ever after. So it was actually a big story back in the day.
That's really, really cool.
Because they just didn't release them all. They did it piecemeal so they draw people into it. They would find out the story and really became fascinated by what happened. These people have both been dead for years and years and years. And they have the big happy ending. So a little good Valentine's feel good story.
It's very positive.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna bring everybody down again.
Yeah, speaking of negative, here we go.
Okay, well, I chose the story of Patrick Claiborne and Sue Tarleton, who Claiborne was engaged to her starting in 1864, and we all know he does not live to see out 1864. So you know how that goes. But first of all, I want to mention that Claiborne was very awkward around women. And he also would write them poetry. So there was one that Simmons has in Claiborne's biography. And I was going to read it. So here I go. Mary's going to do a poetry reading.
Oh, good.
So this is one that he goes on a walk with a young woman in May of 1854. And he pens this poem to her. Tell me, do your footsteps still roam to yonder shady hill where the sweet May apple flowers neath the pretty dogwood bowers, where the mockbird's varied song echoes sweet through the woods among first we met near yonder hill and fancy paints that meeting still? So bad.
Oof.
So bad.
Sounds like a bad Spice Girl song.
Yeah, it does. But anyway, so that's who Patrick Claiborne was. A bit of a hopeless romantic, very awkward around women. So Sue, his fiance, was born January 6th, 1840 in Talladega County, Alabama, and she's the daughter of a cotton farmer. They meet at the General Hardy's wedding in January of 1864. And Claiborne had taken 2 weeks leave for this wedding. This is the first time he's ever taken leave since he's been in the Army. And knowing Claiborne, it was probably reluctantly. It was probably at Hardy's insistence, like, no, dude, you're coming to be my best man and you need a break. Because keep in mind, January 1864, they've been through the battles for Chattanooga and all that. So it's been a pretty rough go for them. So Sue stands across from Claiborne at Hardy's wedding. And Simmons, in his biography of Claiborne, says he was instantly and hopelessly smitten with her. And keep in mind, they're both very shy, Claiborne and Sue. But Claiborne still asks at the end of the night if he could call upon her, and she shyly accepts. And just as his 2 weeks are nearly up, they've been spending a lot of time together, and Claiborne asks Sue to marry him. She doesn't give him an immediate answer. She just gives him permission to write her, which is like, ooh, is that scandalous? It's like, no, I can't say yes or no, but you can write me letters. So Claiborne confessed to a friend in a letter that he had fallen instantly in love with Miss Sue on first sight. So eventually, once he gets back to camp, the men notice a change in him. So I don't know if Claiborne was a real grumpy bastard, or just really quiet or whatever, but apparently there's a huge change to the point that rumors start floating around camp that he had lost his heart with a young lady in Alabama. Irving Buck, one of his aide-de-camps, described him as being in a heavenly mood. So it sounds like Claiborne was a bit of a grumpy bastard at times. Kind of like me. Sounds like it. Kind of like me.
No one's that bad.
Claiborne's, you fucker. Jesus. Maybe Claiborne's my spirit animal.
There you go.
So the staff noticed a huge difference in his behavior. And also he had gone keep in mind, so before he takes this 2-week leave of absence, he had gone for 3 years without one. He requests another soon after getting back because he wants to go and visit Sue again. So he and Sue are exchanging letters until he takes another leave in February of 1864. And this is what he writes. After keeping me in cruel suspense for 6 weeks, she has at length consented to be mine. That's what he wrote. And we are engaged. And that's what he writes to one of his friends.
Oh, it took her so long.
6 weeks. Can you imagine waiting 6 weeks for an answer like that?
Surprised he didn't move on.
And Claiborne also
surprised he didn't go him in Butterfield, jump the lines and go off one of the barns.
Bang barn. I need to go to the bang barn. Claiborne also wrote that he had the feelings of an accepted lover when the fair one has relented, when the heartless little conqueror shows that she is all heart by descending from her triumphal car, lifting her wounded captive from the mud and placing him palpitating with 1,000 new emotions by her side.
Wow.
Hey, if the army thing didn't work out for him, if he hadn't been killed, he could have had a career at Hallmark.
He could have. He absolutely could have. I mean,
like this is the cheesy poetry letter romantic writer of the Civil War is Patrick Claiborne.
Definitely.
So Symonds describes Claiborne as a genuine romantic, which I would have to agree with. So the letters from her became the best part of his day. He did complain, though, that she wrote too large and left large spaces between the lines. But Symonds writes that one suspects that even had she written in tiny script, they still would not have been long enough to satisfy him. That's what she said.
Wow. It's an interesting one. You write too big and you leave too many gaps. And that's like those grammar people, but even back then.
Yeah, he's like, you write too big, write smaller, and write me more. And none of their letters are around at all. One of his other aides did get to see some of the letters on occasion that Claiborne was writing to Sue, but Claiborne kept the ones that she wrote him, never showed anybody about them, and we have no idea where they are today. And the one thing that it was his aide, Mangum, said of these that he was surprised by the depth of Claiborne's feelings. So that tells me that Claiborne was a man who was probably pretty quiet, didn't really express his feelings too much, very much like a typical soldier, like you would expect Claiborne to be. Magnum also wrote that Claiborne was devoid of all approach to sentimentality, and they were full of the most sweet and tender passion. So again, we're seeing it's kind of like back to Reynolds, what Ellie says of getting to talk to Kate, that she gets to know another side of her brother. Well, here's, Mangum, who's serving alongside Claiborne, and he's seeing another side to Claiborne that nobody else has ever seen before, that clearly Sue has brought out in him, which is really an interesting part of the story. So in September of 1864, Sue suffers from what's called neuralgia, which is it's just kind of a catch-all for, I don't know, whatever the fuck kind of ailments people had back then. But anyway, she was not able to write him, and he was not doing well with that. Apparently his mood completely dipped. So Claiborne goes to apply for furlough so that he can go see Sue and see how she is, as well as so that they can get married. And this is around the time of the Battle of Atlanta. And much like Sherman to McPherson, Hood says no to Claiborne. No, you can't go see her. And you're like, I need you right now. Even though the campaign is over, like the battle for Atlanta has happened, so it's kind of quiet. Hood is like, nope, you need to be here. And Sue gets very upset about this, saying to her friend, I don't know how I am to get through it. And then she says, I believe I have had a regular fit of the blues. So she's very, very upset by this too. And I'm sure Claiborne was as well. Like, can you imagine going to Hood, like the Battle of Atlanta is over. You've given it everything. You've done like the entire Atlanta campaign. And Hood's like, nope, you need to stay, kind of thing. You got to wonder if Johnson has still been in charge. Johnson probably would have let him go.
You never know. I mean, maybe it's tough to say, but you could, again, I bet there's a lot of stories just like this too.
Yeah.
And
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
A lot of people did let people go home. I mean, for different reasons. Yep. He should have said his mother was sick. Then he could have gone. like Elijah Hunt Rhodes,
Was that the truth? Was Elijah Hunt Rhodes'
Yeah,
mother?
the general said, "You've been a good boy, Elijah. You can go home for 2 weeks for a long."
Well, I
I don't know
think
if that was
after
a
all
true
Claiborne
story or
had been
not.
in
The mother.
Atlanta, you'd think Claiborne had been a good boy too.
Yeah, exactly.
Kennesaw, like basically saving them. So, as we all know, Claiborne is killed at the Battle of Franklin, and Sue learns of the death 5 days later. So she will wear mourning every day for a year. But in 1867, she will marry a Confederate Army captain named Hugh Cole. But she unfortunately passes away a year later. So very,
So she's
it's
another one whose
sad.
life who moved on. She
Yeah.
her love of her life. She is killed, and she moves on pretty quickly.
But you got to wonder if she's moving on or if she's just doing, like, she's just going through the motions, right? Like, she ends up dying a year later. So who knows if that was, if, kind of the broken heart thing contributed that, because she seemed, at first, she doesn't seem like she's too into Claiborne because he comes on pretty strongly. Like, this is a man who's really shy around women. But then when he meets the love of his life, he's like, oh, yeah, like, I want to get married to you. And I've known you for like, 2 fucking weeks, right? But then she ends up passing away a year later after she marries this Hugh Cole guy. So, but I thought their story was really an interesting one too. Just because but we don't know the letters. But what we learn from this story of Claiborne is a side that maybe had he not met Sue, nobody would have known about. But here's Mangum able to say, like, this was a guy who was very passionate and very sweet and very much had a lot of emotions, which I'm guessing Claiborne wasn't a very emotion-driven guy, like outwardly to his soldiers. But I mean, why would you be, right?
Give her credit, right? And a lot. I mean, it had to have been difficult, right? To be with some of these people. I mean, you look back at the, one of these guys from around these parts, Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, Mary.
Yeah.
He was old Fanny. She was dating the whole football team at Bowdoin College, so, she was dating him, and she was dating his, I think it was his roommate, right? And so, it goes to show that, they're different people, and they're just different.
Oh, they are. They're complete. Like General Meade was a completely different person with his wife than what he was with his men. Like with his men, he's got a bad temper and stuff. Apparently with his wife, he was sounds a lot like Claiborne, like very tender, very romantic. I've read some of the letters that he wrote her, and it's like, how is this George Gordon Meade that is writing this stuff? But it's interesting when you look at this, like when you look at Claiborne or John Reynolds, and even the couple that you talked about, you're seeing another side to these men that we might not have seen otherwise, which is really, really cool. It's the human side.
I wanted to pick somebody who no one ever heard of. It wasn't,
No, I thought your story is awesome.
Well, I don't think it's Claiborne or Reynolds. It's just that it's good sometimes to look. Everyone looks at the big names. It's always fun, like you said. It's all about personifying people, And well, I'll tell you, Mary. We've been hearing some lovely, flowery stories here. Okay, but we got ourselves a thinking, right? What if some of our generals, were around today, and they were hitting some of these local dating sites, and they need to set up a dating profile. How would it read? So here's what I'm going to do. We're going to take turns. I'm going to read you this general's profile. I want you to tell me A, who the general is, or who the Civil War personality is, and B, if you think this profile might actually just work.
Okay.
All right, so here we go. You ready?
Yeah.
I was born in a city that never sleeps, and neither do I. I'm a lawyer who has had his heart broken, but looking for love yet again. If love is a crime, then I am guilty forever, and this time I won't be temporarily insane. I enjoy drinking whiskey with the boys and talking and taking long, unauthorized walks to the peach orchard with that special someone to help complement my salient. So if you're interested in becoming my Lady of Spain, shake a leg and come hang with this Excelsior kind of gentleman.
You're talking about Dan Sickles.
Correct.
I think the right lady might respond.
You think so? Huh? Okay. Yeah. So you think old Uncle Dan might find himself some love again?
He might find someone, yeah. Hopefully the lucky lady doesn't meet somebody that takes her off to the Bang Barn on a Saturday afternoon.
Maybe that's looking for love in all the wrong places. Maybe that's where he's going. All right, so let's see what you got.
All right. I was born in New England. and I'm West Point educated.
Do you wonder who this is?
I
Okay, I'm sorry.
I also know math, and I taught it for a while at West Point. So I'm good with numbers. I also almost joined the clergy, but when Beauregard fired up on Fort Sumter, I knew my calling was to be a soldier and that it was a sign from God. As for what I like to do, I would much prefer going to a coffee shop because I can't stand drunkenness and loud and obnoxious people. I enjoy reading too, mainly the Bible, and I even run a Bible study at camp as well. And I would be happy to talk about the scriptures anytime over coffee because I don't drink. I do enjoy running and moving quickly, but not as much as what my friends say. Reports of that are very, very exaggerated. Besides drunkenness and loud, obnoxious people, I can't stand swearing. You won't ever hear me swear at all. I do have great command of the English language, but don't ask me to speak in German. That never has gone very well for me at all.
Franz Siegel. Obviously, it's Oliver Otis Howard.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what kind of woman he's looking for. We're talking about Bible study and not drink. I mean,
well, he's gonna post it on what's that Christian dating website?
ChristianMingle.com.
That's where he's
Do you know someone signed me up for that one time as a joke, and I started to get emails like 10 years ago?
Oh my God.
Yeah, well, I think that would work for the right kind of person. For someone like Howard, that's probably who he's looking for. So he's fishing in the right pond. And
yeah, well,
I think he's using the right bait.
He's saying like no bars, no drinking, nothing.
Okay, I think that would work then. I think that's a good one.
Okay.
I think it's good.
All
right. My next one. Okay. Ladies, are you the type of woman who loves a laid-back but socially refined country boy? My heart is full after it was broken when my first love ran away with my college roommate. But thanks to the support of my friends, that burning itch in my loins of love has gone away and melted away. I'm the bashful type who turns as red as my shirt after a mere wink and loves to disappear for days at a time when the going gets rough. But I always seem to show up to save the day right in the nick of time. So hit me up if you're interested. Thanks to the invention of antibiotics, our love will be the only thing that burns.
Talking about AP Hill. That's great.
Would it work?
Yeah. I mean, they might be a little bit turned off by the antibiotic thing. Like I don't know, if I read some dating profile and antibiotics were mentioned, I might nope the fuck away from that one.
He's very open though. He's open.
He's at least, I guess he's open. I guess, yeah, then, yeah. No, I wouldn't.
So you don't think that you would if you were some kind of dating coach, you wouldn't advise EP Hill to go with that? You think he should change it up? I would
say, like, don't put the antibiotics in there.
Okay.
That's gonna raise more questions and red flags as well. Not just a red plaid shirt, red flags.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. Well, AP will take it under advisement then. That's why we're doing this. We're helping these people out.
It was really good though. I did like that. That was really good. Okay, so my next one. I was born in Virginia and attended West Point, and I fought in Mexico. I taught at Virginia Military Institute after that. My students seemed very, very indifferent to me, but I like to think they liked me because I'm a little bit eccentric and I'm not like the other professors there. You've no doubt heard those rumors that I'm very, very different or even a little weird. Like I said, I prefer the term eccentric and unique. While I am stern with my men, I can assure you that outside of that, I'm very different and very, very easygoing. I enjoy spending my time reading the scriptures, especially on Sundays, and usually don't do anything else on Sundays but read the scriptures. So if you're down with that, why don't you check me out? Now, things I like: lemons, horseback riding on Little Sorrel, lemons, reading the Bible, lemons, the Bible, lemons. What do I dislike? Trees, hill, not hills, hill, trees, going for walks in the evenings. I much prefer when it's daylight to go for walks because bad things can happen when it's at dusk. And I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I do like lemons.
Ooh, that's a tough one. That's a tough one right there. Did you mention lemons? Yeah, good old Stonewall, good old TJ.
Yep.
Um,
Had to go with TJ Jackson.
very good, very well played. I think that would definitely work. I wasn't too sure about the whole walking in the woods at night, the whole kidnapping thing you're alluding to, on a dating profile. But I think overall, I think it would work. I think that's a pretty good deal.
He's saying no to walking in the woods at dusk. Because bad things can happen.
Exactly. I'm like, okay, sign me up. We're going to go in the woods and bad things are going to happen. I'm in. All right. I got one more for you. Okay.
Yep.
See if you can figure this one out. And again, tell me if it would work. Okay. Ladies, are you looking for a man with a slow hand? If so, this Daddy Mac is waiting forever to move on you. I was born in the city of brotherly love, and despite my small stature, my heart is full like a young Napoleon. Before we get together, I'll take months to prepare to make you happy, to ensure our relationship lasts much longer than just 7 days. My past relationships all tell me that I performed splendidly, and it was a masterful piece of art. Hopefully with you, I trust that our days will do us both justice.
McClellan. I think so. Yeah, that'll work. I mean, he's a little bit overconfident, but yeah, as long as he can keep that up. I mean, he's got a lot to live up to with that one.
Well, I think he's definitely setting the stage for greatness with that one.
He is.
He definitely is.
But again, it goes back to under promise, over deliver. He might be over delivering and under promising.
He might be, but you know what though? If it doesn't work out, he'll just find someone to blame.
Yeah. Or so over promising, under delivering. I got that totally fucked up. I don't know.
A masterful piece of ours.
Yeah. Okay. I have one more for you too.
All right.
I was born. I don't know why we're laughing so much right now.
So stupid.
I was born. Jesus. I was born in Ohio and attended West Point. I would have graduated higher in my class, but hey, do you mean to tell me that a clean uniform and polished buttons makes a good soldier? Fuck that noise. Let's just say I know how to have a good time. And when it comes to jewelry, I'm your guy. I'll be able to tell you if something is real gold or not. See my time in California for what happened there with that. I enjoy lighting fires. Wink, wink. But despite what you have heard, only 30% of Atlanta burned. Fuck Hood. But I digress. I also enjoy long walks, especially to the sea. And I have plenty of stamina for something like that, among other things.
Hey.
Yeah. Woo. I prefer not to read maps and just wander. I usually end up in the right spot, if you know what I mean. And despite what you may have heard. Fuck Claiborne. My dislikes: Ohio, full frontal attacks. Ohio, Claiborne. Ohio, newspapers, politics. Ohio, the song that must not be named that they wrote about me when I went on my little march. Ohio. Oh, I do enjoy going to the theater as well. So anyway, if you're looking for a good time with a spicy redhead, give me a call.
It's either Ron Howard or William Sherman, one of the two. Wow. William Sherman.
Yep.
I think that it's confident. It's to the point. Don't think he likes Ohio.
No, he doesn't.
And I think overall, I think it's good. I think that would work out for him. Yeah. I think that would be pretty good. I think all these little ones we did, I think, probably tell the story that they're all glad they lived back then and not now.
Yeah.
Realistically.
Yep.
Realistically. So I thought that was a good one. I thought that was good. I think I'll
thank you.
I'll give little Uncle Blingy, because he has access to the gold too, so he's got the good stuff.
Yeah.
A little foraging among friends from time to time. A little
lighting
burning
fires.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
I should have thrown a howling joke in there too. If you want a good if you want to howl, give me a call.
Definitely.
Hey-oh.
God. But I think the overall picture with this is, when you look back in the 1860s, the people are just like they are today. And they love, they learn, they yearn, they want what they want.
Yep.
And I think it's one of those stories that that continues on. And what's good about Valentine's Day is it's a holiday that gets teased because it's a very marketable, it's all
It
marketing.
is.
Even
Yep.
back then they knew it. But you know what though? It comes around every year and everyone buys their cards, they buy their flowers, they buy their candy. And 9 months later is November, and it's the busiest birth month of the year. And I was born in November, and I hate thinking about that around this time of year. But you know what though? It's a holiday that again, it's part of this of American culture that goes
Yep.
way back. And when you think about these soldiers in their camps and these families back home, it's these little things that kept them going,
Yep.
right? It's these little things that kept them looking forward to that next day, let them keep going. So it's tough to rip on Valentine's Day, especially when
yeah.
you look back at the year that they were all fighting in.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's coming up?
What's coming up? So we have so this episode, well, if you're listening to it, Saturday morning, we have our usual roundtable at 10 o'clock. So hopefully you will join us for that. We usually get a pretty good crowd out for it. What we're now calling the Civil War Breakfast Club is those who are joining us for those Facebook Lives. And I think I said roundtable instead of Facebook Live because our next roundtable is on Wednesday, February the 17th from 6 till 7:30ish, which if you've attended our roundtables before, you'll be getting a Zoom invite from me probably Saturday afternoon or Sunday sometime. If you've never been a part of our roundtables, they are always a lot of fun. We just have kind of a free-flowing discussion with everybody about the Civil War. And we basically do it like to give everybody can come on and just talk. Darren and I don't do a lot of talking when we're on there because we just want to hear what other people have to say and give them a chance to have a voice. So if you haven't been part of it before, info@civilwarbreakfastclub.com. Send us an email and we will be sure to send you an invite. Next episode, we will be talking about Forts Henry and Forts Donelson. So we are back in the Western Theater again. And then
first battle talk in a while too, Mary.
Yeah. And then I think the week after that is the Sherman's Meridian campaign, which was conducted after Vicksburg.
A lot of good stuff coming. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. So we've had some fun. The last couple of weeks, I've had some fun. We talked about Valentine's Day today. We talked in the past. We talked about Booth. We talked about some secession stuff last week. So now we get back into the meat and potatoes of this old Breakfast Club thing. We're going to talk about some battle stuff. So we will definitely look forward to that. So
for sure.
Again, Roundtable are live on Saturday. So if you're listening to this, hopefully you listen to this before the live. If not, then just listen to it. And then, of course, the Roundtable. And then, to your point, the book club coming up down the road.
Yes, the book club as well. The meeting for that will be March 31st. That will be upon us before we know it. So yeah, if you haven't signed up for our book club yet and would like to, info@civilwarbreakfastclub.com. We'll get you signed up for it. We're reading 4 books this year. First one's Black Iron Mercy. It's a really awesome historical novel about a man who was in the Iron Brigade.
Exactly. So I think we can successfully tie a pink bow around the Cupid's arrow on this one, Mary.
Yeah.
And we can call it a day. So anyway, as always, it's a pleasure. Looking forward to hearing this on Saturday. Looking forward to live and all the good stuff we have coming down the road. So we are at half a year, officially completed our 26th episode. Holy crap. I've had to talk to you for 26 straight weeks.
You have.
What a thing.
You're such a trooper, Weeks.
No one's killed each other yet, so that's a good
trooper,
thing.
My God. Put up with me for that long, you fucker.
I do what I can. Anyway, everybody, thanks for listening. We appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you have a great Valentine's Day, as this will drop the day before Valentine's Day. So have a good one. Stay safe, stay out of trouble, and we will look forward to talking to you, as we always say, on the other side.
Yes. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody, and have a great day. And we will see you all again soon.
Peace out.
Bye.